You ever have that moment where your gut tells you something's off, but everyone around you acts like you're the crazy one? That was me 3 months ago, sitting across from my dad in his giant mahogany office, listening to him talk about family legacy, while casually slipping in the biggest betrayal I'd ever experienced. My name's Derek. I'm 29. For the past 7 years, I've been working side by side with my father at our family business, a mid-sized logistics company he built from the ground up. Not a glamorous empire, but it was solid. Consistent clients, good contracts, and a loyal staff who'd been around since before I even knew what shipping manifests were. Dad's company was his pride, and I was proud to be his right-hand man. I started at the bottom, literally hauling boxes, doing graveyard runs in battered trucks, answering phones at 2 a.m. when drivers missed checkpoints. Slowly, I earned more responsibility. At first, I handled accounts, then logistics planning, then came management. For the last 2 years, I was practically running the place. Payroll, client relationships, fleet upgrades, you name it. Dad showed up less and less, and even when he did, he'd let me do the talking. He'd nod along during meetings and smile like he was watching his legacy come to life. I thought I was next in line. I thought he saw me as his partner, maybe even his successor. Turns out, I was just keeping the seat warm. The first red flag showed up on a Monday morning, folded neatly inside an unassuming request. Dad asked me to come in early before the team showed up. Nothing out of the ordinary. We did that sometimes, especially during peak season. But this time, his tone was different. Less collaborative, more rehearsed, like he'd practiced what he was going to say. I walked into his office, coffee in hand, and found him already seated, back straight, fingers laced on the desk. Across from him sat my younger brother, Jason, freshly graduated, 23, and until recently, more interested in cryptocurrency and influencer marketing than anything related to logistics. Derek, Dad said, motioning for me to sit. We've been doing some thinking about the future. I glanced at Jason, who offered me that lopsided grin he always wore when he was bluffing his way through something. Same grin he used when he forgot my birthday last year and claimed he'd scheduled the text wrong. I nodded slowly and took the seat. I want you to start training Jason, Dad continued. Show him the ropes, the accounts, the systems, the client relationships, everything. Eventually, I'd like him to take over operations while you focus more on strategy. I remember blinking, unsure if I heard that right. Wait, take over operations? Like my role? I asked. Dad leaned back. Yes, eventually. You'll be overseeing the broader picture, less hands-on. It's a natural transition. Jason, still grinning, chimed in. Don't worry, bro. I won't mess it up. Just need a little crash course. I should have said something right then. Should have laid it all out. But I didn't. I nodded. I smiled. I played the good son. Then I walked out of that office with my stomach in knots. Over the next few days, I kept trying to make sense of it. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe Dad didn't mean it the way it sounded. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the more obvious it became. This wasn't a collaborative plan, it was a demotion. Jason was being handed my role without lifting a finger, and I was being boxed into some vague strategy position, whatever that meant. Meanwhile, Jason strolled around the office like he owned the place, asking interns where we kept the energy drinks and showing off his new smartwatch like it was relevant to freight management. I kept waiting for Dad to clarify, to sit me down and say, "Hey, Derek, you're still the anchor here. This is just temporary." But the talk never came. Instead, Jason got a new office. Mine, actually. They repainted it without asking me. I found out when I walked in and nearly tripped over a pile of Amazon boxes filled with gaming chairs and LED lights. My nameplate was gone. Just like that. I wish I could say that was the moment I snapped. That I walked into the boardroom and flipped a table. But no, I swallowed it. I kept things running. I showed up early, stayed late, answered questions Jason didn't even know he should be asking. I did the job because I love the company. Or maybe I just didn't know who I was without it. Then came the second blow. And this time, it was personal. Jason lasted exactly 6 days before making his first major mess up. He accidentally voided a standing contract with one of our oldest clients, Shannon Freight Lines, a family-run trucking company that had been with us since I was in high school. They weren't the biggest client, but they were loyal. Every winter, when other companies pulled their contracts due to weather, Shannon stuck it out. They trusted me. We had handshake deals backed by mutual respect. And now that trust was gone, because Jason had optimized their route using a third-party AI scheduler he'd found on some overpriced SaaS marketplace and sent their trucks into a storm zone. 2 rigs slid off the road. One driver ended up in the hospital with a broken leg. Shannon called me directly, livid. When I tried to smooth things over, I realized Jason had already responded to them via email with a GIF. A freaking GIF of a guy shrugging and the words, "My bad. We live and learn." I was mortified. I immediately called Dad. "Dad, this is bad," I said, pacing around the lot behind the building. "We might lose Shannon. They're drivers in the ER." "Jason, he replied with a GIF. "A GIF, Dad." There was a pause on the other end. Then Dad said, "He's learning. Cut him some slack." I laughed. I actually laughed. "You'd have had my head if I'd done that at 23. "You're not 23, he said, voice suddenly cold. "You're 29. You should be able to manage around your brother's inexperience." That was the first time I heard it so clearly. This wasn't about handing Jason an opportunity. It was about forcing me to carry him. The following week, I started noticing small but deliberate changes. Reports I used to review were now being sent to Jason. Clients I'd managed for years were transitioned to him. My email access was restricted. "IT issue," they said, and I was conveniently left off a call with our investors. I didn't even know about it until I saw Jason's calendar and noticed the meeting title, Quarterly Update with Lead Operator. Lead Operator. That was my title. At lunch one day, I confronted Dad. We were at a small Greek place near the office. It was our usual spot. We'd shared souvlaki and inside jokes there for years. This time, though, he was all business. "I need to ask you something," I said, putting down my fork. "Am I being phased out?" He didn't blink. Didn't even look surprised. "Not phased out. Just repositioned. That's corporate speak. Phased out is what you mean. Derek, don't be dramatic. You're still part of the vision. Jason just brings a fresh perspective. He's young, knows tech. The investors like that. But he doesn't know the business. He doesn't respect it. He's playing office like it's a TikTok trend." Dad sighed and leaned back in his chair. "You've had your time. Maybe it's time you step back and let someone else take a shot." That word. Had. I'd had my time. Like I was some relic being carted off to the museum while Jason pranced around with his neon keyboard and motivational quotes taped to his door. I left lunch early. That night, I stayed late at the office. Alone. Lights off. Just me and the hum of the vending machine. I walked the floor like a ghost, touching the desks, the whiteboards, the conference room, chairs still warm with the day's arguments and caffeine-fueled brainstorming. I'd helped build all of this. My fingerprints were everywhere. And now I felt like a stranger in my own home. The breaking point came 3 days later. I walked into the office and saw my team, my actual team, the people I'd hired and trained, clustered around Jason in the break room. He was handing out cupcakes. "Promotion cupcakes," he announced, grinning. Dad made it official. "I'm now the head of operations." I blinked. The room fell quiet when they saw me. Someone even stepped aside like I'd walked into the wrong party. I stared at Jason. "What? Oh, yeah." He smiled like it was nothing. "Dad meant to tell you. It was kind of last minute. But yeah, I'm officially running ops now." "Pretty cool, huh?" I didn't move. Didn't say a word. Just turned and walked straight into my father's office. He looked up from his laptop, not even surprised to see me. "You made him head of operations?" I asked, my voice steady but low. "You couldn't even look me in the eye and say it?" "It was going to happen eventually," he replied, closing the lid of his laptop. "Better to rip the Band-Aid." "Rip the—" I shook my head. "You don't rip a Band-Aid off someone who's bleeding out. You patch them up first. This is a business decision." "No. It's a family decision disguised as a business one. And you didn't even bother with the disguise." He stood then, walked around his desk. "Derek, if this is about titles or ego, it's about respect." I pointed at the door. "He's never worked a night shift. Never lost sleep over a delayed shipment. He didn't even know what net 30 terms meant until last week." Dad's expression hardened. "You don't get to question my decisions. This is my company. You work here because I let you." There it was. Stripped of pleasantries. 7 years of sweat, loyalty, sacrifice, reduced to permission. A favor. "Then let me make it easier," I said. My heart was thudding, but I didn't hesitate. "I quit." He raised an eyebrow. "You're serious? You told me I had my time." "Fine. Enjoy the future." And I left. No dramatic exit. No slamming doors. Just quiet. Bitter air swallowing me as I walked out. I didn't sleep that night. My phone buzzed nonstop. Coworkers confused. Friends concerned. Jason sending me a meme of a guy waving goodbye with the caption, "Don't let the door hit you." I didn't respond. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise, wondering what I'd just done, wondering who I was now. But the thing about being underestimated, about being cast aside like yesterday's headline, is that eventually, people stop watching you. They assume you're out of the game. And that's when you make your move. Because the company didn't just run on spreadsheets and meetings. It ran on people. And I knew exactly where the fault lines were. The day after I quit, everything felt still. No meetings. No calendar notifications. No Jason blasting lo-fi beats from the speakers in my old office. I sat at my kitchen table in a hoodie, staring at a cold cup of coffee and an untouched breakfast sandwich I didn't even remember making. The silence was deafening. I'd spent 7 years waking up to fire drills and client calls. Now I was just home, unemployed, 30 next month, no backup plan, and no idea what I was going to do next. I'd love to tell you I jumped out of bed, inspired and driven, ready to conquer the world. But that would be a lie. The truth is, I spiraled a little. The first week was a blur of Netflix, takeout, and ignored calls from people I wasn't ready to talk to. My apartment, once just a pit stop between 12-hour workdays, started to feel like a cell. I was restless, angry, lost. I kept replaying that last conversation with my dad over and over. "You work here because I let you." Like everything I'd done meant nothing. Like I'd been a glorified intern whose presence he merely tolerated. The hardest part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the identity crisis. For years, I was the company. People respected me, looked to me for decisions. Now I was just a guy in sweatpants watching reruns of a cooking show I didn't even like. And the worst part? Jason was probably sitting at my desk, feet up, acting like he'd earned it. But slowly, painfully slowly, something inside me began to shift. It started with a text from Marcus, our head of fleet maintenance. Just 5 words. "You didn't deserve that, man." That one message cracked something open. Over the next few days, others trickled in. Rita from accounting, Kim from customer support, even 2 of our junior dispatchers. They all said some version of the same thing, that the company already felt different, that things were getting sloppy, that Jason had started outsourcing simple tasks he didn't understand. That morale was low. I didn't know what to do with that information at first. I wasn't going to beg for my job back. But something else started brewing, something quieter than rage, something more focused. If they didn't want me at the table, I'd build my own table. The idea came to me at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was lying awake, scrolling through job boards, when I saw an ad for a freight brokerage training program. I didn't need the program. I could teach it, but it triggered a thought. What if I didn't try to join another company? What if I started one? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I knew the logistics industry inside and out. I knew where the inefficiencies were. I knew which clients were being overcharged and which drivers were being underpaid. I knew who was being ignored, who was looking for better service, and who would follow me if I had something to offer. I didn't need a building or a warehouse. Not yet. All I needed was a laptop, a phone, and a plan. That night, I opened a blank document and titled it, Phase 1. I started reaching out, quietly. I wasn't trying to poach anyone. Not yet. I just wanted to know what people needed. I called Shannon Freight Lines first. They still hadn't renewed their contract with my dad's company after the storm debacle. The owner, Marie Shannon, sounded tired when she picked up. "Derek? Is that you?" she asked. "It's me," I said. "Just checking in. I heard about the driver. Is he okay?" She sighed. "Broken femur. He's recovering, but it's going to be a long road." I hesitated. "If you're still between logistics partners, I'm working on something. Nothing official yet. But if I built something better, smaller, more attentive, would you be interested?" There was a long pause. Then, "You build it, Derek, and I'll be your first client." That was all I needed. I used what little savings I had, plus a small personal loan from my college roommate, Eric, to register my own LLC. I named it Forge Logistics. It felt symbolic. I wasn't inheriting anything. I was forging something new, from scratch. The next few weeks were brutal. I worked from a folding table in my tiny living room. No secretary, no admin, no fancy CRM software. Just spreadsheets, phone calls, and sheer willpower. I built partnerships with independent drivers I'd met over the years. I created a simple web portal to track shipments using open source tools. I handled every invoice myself, every call, every client request. It was exhausting, but it was mine. The funny thing about starting over is that people start to see you differently. Old colleagues who'd always seen me as Mr. Reliable started looking at me like an underdog. And people love an underdog story, especially when they've got a shared grudge. Within 6 weeks, I had 4 clients. Not huge contracts, but solid ones. Companies that had been neglected under Jason's watch. One of them even forwarded me an email chain where Jason tried to use ChatGPT to write a shipment schedule and ended up with a completely incorrect freight routing plan. I didn't laugh, but I did save the screenshot. Still, it wasn't all victories. I made mistakes. One day I forgot to schedule a follow-up with a client and nearly lost the account. Another day, my Wi-Fi went out during a Zoom pitch, and I had to give a presentation from a Starbucks parking lot in the rain. I learned the hard way that running your own show meant owning every win and every loss. But that was the difference now. I owned it. I wasn't some placeholder for a golden child with an Instagram addiction. I was the guy in the arena. Then came the day I saw Jason in public for the first time since I left. I was walking out of a supply store, picking up ink cartridges for my printer, of all things, when I spotted him across the parking lot, getting into his brand new Audi. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. But something about the way he adjusted his designer sunglasses before revving the engine set my teeth on edge. He still thought he'd won. I could have walked away, but I didn't. Instead, I got back in my car, pulled out my notebook, and started writing down a list. Not of names, of systems, weak points, vendors my dad's company had been mistreating, clients who'd left, drivers who'd been burned. I wasn't going to sabotage them. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to outwork them, to outlast them. Because while Jason was busy polishing his LinkedIn page and showing off at business expos, I was in the trenches. I was rebuilding from the dirt up. And every contract I landed, every email I sent, every mile logged by one of my partner drivers, it all brought me closer. To what exactly? To a day I hadn't allowed myself to imagine just yet. A day when Jason would finally realize that respect can't be inherited. That loyalty isn't automatic. That you can't fake leadership with cupcake parties and job titles you didn't earn. And that when you try to replace someone who built the system without understanding how it works, eventually, it all falls apart. By month 3, Forge Logistics wasn't just surviving, it was growing. I had 8 steady clients, 2 part-time virtual assistants, and a tight-knit circle of independent drivers who actually liked working with me. We weren't flashy. We didn't have neon signs or company-branded pins. But we were fast, dependable, and transparent. No AI-generated scheduling, no tone-deaf memes, no clueless execs holding meetings about synergy while trucks sat idle. I had systems. I had discipline. But most importantly, I had trust. And that's when I started thinking bigger. Not just about scaling. About revenge. I hadn't planned on it. Not at first. I really hadn't. For the first 2 months after I left, I was too focused on getting Forge off the ground. I was in survival mode. Just trying to prove to myself I wasn't crazy for walking away. But success has a funny way of clearing your vision. And once the noise faded, all I could see were the cracks forming in the empire I used to serve. It started with whispers, quiet rumors from my old coworkers who still checked in from time to time. Jason was cutting corners, outsourcing too much. He'd hired a social media manager before replacing the outdated shipment tracking system. One of the drivers told me he'd had to front money for a fuel reimbursement because Jason's team didn't have the right form. But the real opportunity came 2 weeks later. I was grabbing lunch with Rita, accounting legend, sharp as a scalpel, and one of the few people from the old company I still trusted. We'd stayed in touch. She'd never taken sides when I left, but she hadn't been shy about calling Jason a puppy trying to run a farm. We met at this tiny ramen place, midway between her office and my apartment. She looked tired, stressed in a way I'd never seen before. "Things are bad," she said, barely letting me sit down. And I mean bad. I raised an eyebrow. Worse than the Shannon Freightline debacle. She didn't laugh. That worried me. They lost 2 major contracts last week. One of them was Birchwood Construction. Jason promised them a fleet upgrade he couldn't deliver. And guess what? They pulled everything. Full exit. Birchwood, I said, stunned. That's, what, 30% of Q2 revenue. Closer to 40, if you count the inbound materials, Rita said. And you know who Jason blamed? I didn't answer. I already knew. Me, she said flatly. Said I miscalculated budget allocation for equipment refresh. Never mind that I warned him 3 times in writing. He forwarded the emails to Dad, with the warnings deleted. I stared at her. He doctored your emails? She nodded. And your dad believed him. Or at least, he pretended to. That's when it clicked. They weren't just in over their heads. They were desperate. That night, I sat at my desk for hours, phone face down, staring at a spreadsheet. Not a financial one. A list. Of people. Patterns. Pressure points. It was time to stop surviving. It was time to strike. But not recklessly. Not emotionally. If I was going to take down the empire that threw me away, I needed to be smart. Surgical. So I started laying the groundwork. The first step? Information. I already had a solid network. Former clients, old coworkers, even vendors who were tired of dealing with Jason's influencer energy, as one supplier called it. But I needed more than gripes. I needed leverage. So I reached out to Marco. Marco had been the company's lead systems administrator for over a decade. Quiet guy. Always wore the same gray hoodie. He was also criminally underpaid and practically invisible to the new regime. I'd always treated him with respect. Brought him coffee during server downtimes. Sat with him through those long overnight security updates. We weren't close, but there was trust. I met him at a dimly lit bar on a Thursday night. The kind of place where the music is too low and the drinks are too strong. I heard you're doing your own thing now, he said, sipping a neat whiskey. I am, I said. And I heard you're babysitting Jason's tech tantrums. Marco smirked. The man thought HTML was a type of cloud storage. We laughed. Then I leaned in. I need help, I said. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. But if you happen to know about any vulnerabilities in the system, or backups of deleted documents, or, I don't know, internal audit logs from the last quarter, he raised an eyebrow. Hypothetically. Exactly, I said. Hypothetically. He didn't say yes. But 3 days later, I got a secure zip file in my inbox titled lunch_meeting_notes.zip. Inside, gold. Exported email chains. Transaction logs. Client correspondence. Mistakes covered up. Promises made that were never followed through. Even a voice recording. Jason ranting to someone over the phone, calling a client a boomer with trucker brain because they dared to question his modernization. I didn't do anything with it. Yet. That wasn't the point. The point was control. The next step? Clients. I started having quiet coffees. Dinners. Parking lot chats. No pressure, no pitches. Just, let me know if you ever need something different. Some were curious. A few already knew about Forge. But what I needed was a tipping point. That came from an unexpected place. A woman named Liana Vargas. Liana was the procurement lead at a mid-sized agricultural supply chain I'd worked with back in the day. She was blunt, fierce, and allergic to corporate nonsense. We'd butted heads once over a late shipment, but we'd resolved it professionally, and she respected that. She called me out of the blue. Heard you're not dead, she said. Not yet, I replied. Trying to stay that way. I've got a problem, she said. Your brother promised me a 3-day turnaround on livestock feed deliveries. Took 6. Then had the gall to suggest we update our expectations because he's shifting the paradigm. What does that even mean? It means he's drowning, I said. And he's trying to pretend it's performance art. She laughed. Then, without hesitation, send me your rates. If you can guarantee 5 days or less, you've got our business. That was the crack I needed. I poured everything into delivering for her. Nailed every delivery. Sent daily check-ins. Personalized updates. Liana was impressed, and she had friends. Within 2 weeks, 3 of her industry contacts reached out. All of them had similar stories. All of them were ready for something better. Word started to spread. Jason didn't notice at first. He was too busy posting motivational quotes on LinkedIn about rising from the ashes and hosting office ping-pong tournaments. But Dad noticed. I know this because I got a call from him. Out of nowhere. Derek, he said, tone careful. I hear you're working with some of our clients. They're not your clients, I said calmly. They're clients. They go where the service is. There was a pause. You know this isn't a game. You're burning bridges. No, I said. You did that when you chose a slogan in a hoodie over someone who built your foundation. He sighed. I never wanted it to be like this. Then you shouldn't have lit the match. I hung up. And then, I accelerated. I set up a new client portal. Hired another assistant. Paid my drivers more than market rate. and treated them like partners, not cogs. The final phase of my setup? Visibility. I reached out to a local business podcast I knew. They owed me a favor from a guest speaker spot I did 2 years ago. I pitched them a story, the son who walked away from the family business and built a better one. They loved it. We recorded the episode in one take. I didn't name names. I didn't bash anyone. I just told the truth. How sometimes loyalty is one-sided. How leadership is earned, not given. How vision means nothing without execution. The episode dropped the next week. By the following Monday, my inbox had 60 new inquiries. Jason's company had their worst quarter in 5 years. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because all of this, all the growth, the planning, the leverage, it was just the setup. The real move was coming. And this time, it wasn't about business. It was personal. It happened on a Tuesday, not by accident. I chose that day deliberately, midweek, quiet, right before the quarterly review meeting at my dad's company. The same kind of meeting I used to run. The same meeting Jason once forgot to schedule until 15 minutes before it started and blamed on an email filter issue. It had been 6 months since I walked out of that office with nothing but my pride and a deep, echoing silence in my chest. 6 months of rebuilding from scratch. Of watching Jason fumble his way through my old role, burning bridges faster than he could build them, all while Dad stood behind him, arms crossed, pretending nothing was wrong. But now, things were very wrong. Forge Logistics had exploded. We were no longer the scrappy underdog. We were the real deal. 20 clients. A warehouse lease in progress. 2 small delivery fleets under contract. A dedicated team of dispatchers and planners. And a reputation. We didn't advertise. We didn't need to. Our work spoke for itself. Jason's company, Dad's company, was bleeding. They'd lost nearly half their long-term contracts. 2 key investors had pulled out. Their driver retention was the lowest it had ever been. And their books? A mess. Sloppy invoicing, inconsistent payment terms, and a tangled knot of overlapping vendor agreements Jason didn't even understand. They were vulnerable, but I wasn't interested in kicking them while they were down. Not in the obvious way. I wanted something more poetic. So I invited my father to lunch. He was surprised to hear from me. I didn't expect this, he said when we sat down at the same Greek restaurant where we'd once shared dozens of meals. The one where he told me I'd had my time. I figured we should talk, I said, casually cutting into my euro. You know, see how things are going. He nodded slowly. Jason's been adapting. I didn't respond. I just gave him a tight-lipped smile. He glanced up. I heard about Forge. You're doing well. Better than well, I said. We're expanding. He shifted uncomfortably. I could see it in his eyes, the slow, dawning realization that I wasn't there to reminisce. I was there to show him. I wanted to offer something, I said. A way out. He raised an eyebrow. A way out of what? Your mess, I said plainly. You've lost over $1.2 million in contracts this quarter. Your investors are nervous. Your staff turnover is costing you operational consistency. And Jason? He's not a leader. He's a liability. His jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. I'm offering to buy out 2 of your largest remaining accounts. They've already approached me, by the way. They just didn't want to jump without knowing how clean the split would be. I'll make it painless. Generous, even. You can take the cash and restructure what's left, maybe rebrand. Or not. Doesn't matter to me. You're trying to gut us, he said, voice low. No, I said. I'm giving you a chance to salvage something. Because if I wanted to gut you, I'd just let Jason keep going. We sat in silence for a moment. My father looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in his face that wasn't arrogance or dismissal. I saw fear, but he wasn't ready to accept defeat. Not yet. I'll talk to Jason, he said stiffly. We'll consider your offer. I nodded. Do that. But I already knew he wouldn't. So I prepared for the final push. It began with the leak. I sent the files Marco had given me. Those damning email chains, transaction logs, and audio recordings to one of the remaining investors. Not anonymously. I signed my name. Attached a cover letter that calmly outlined my concerns. Mismanagement, negligence, and ethical red flags that threatened not just operational success, but legal stability. The investor responded within hours. Thank you for your transparency, he wrote. We'll be conducting an internal audit immediately. The next morning, 3 senior staff members resigned. Jason posted a vague, upbeat LinkedIn update about restructuring with purpose. The following week, 2 more clients jumped ship and signed with Forge. Then came the board meeting. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I didn't need to be there. Rita was. She texted me after it ended. He's out. They're removing Jason from operations. Board voted 4-1. I stared at the message for a long time. Not because I was surprised, but because of that one. The one person who still voted for Jason. Dad. He went down with the ship, even as it was already taking on water. But Jason? He didn't go quietly. 3 days later, he showed up at my office. He barged in like a sitcom character, red in the face, practically vibrating with frustration. My team paused mid-call, stunned by the interruption. I calmly stood, gestured for him to step into the hallway, and closed the glass door behind us. You think you won? He hissed. You think this is yours now? I looked at him, really looked at him, and all I saw was a boy drowning in a pool he was never taught to swim in. I don't have to think it, I said. I built it. You tried to play founder and got buried in the first 6 months. That's not winning or losing. That's just reality. You sabotaged me. No, I said, voice low. You sabotaged yourself. I just stopped saving you. He opened his mouth to reply, but I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there in a silence thick with failure. The fallout rippled fast after that. The audit results became public within the month. Investors sued for misrepresentation. Clients demanded refunds. Vendors cut ties. Dad tried to regain control, but the damage was irreversible. They sold off what they could, downsized to a skeleton team. And within another 3 months, the company was shuttered. No press release. No headlines. Just silence. A ghost where a business used to be. I didn't dance on the grave. Didn't post cryptic social media quotes or gloat in interviews. That wasn't the point. The point was clarity. Freedom. Truth. One evening, I sat in my new office, real office this time, not a folding table. There was laughter outside my door, my team sharing snacks and stories. My whiteboard was filled with ideas, expansion plans, and client names I'd fought to earn. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Dad. I didn't know how to let go. You were right. I just wasn't ready to admit it. I stared at it for a moment. Then I turned the phone face down, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. Because I wasn't chasing his approval anymore. He had his legacy. Now I had mine. And I built it from nothing. That was the real victory. And I never looked back.